All right, so it's actually quite misleading, these election petition rules, right? It's called the election petition rules. So you would think that, if people were running an election, which is, making a request to government that, it's a case to the government for an election, isn't it? It's, the candidates are asking the government if they can each of them wants to be a representative, and they've got to get the most votes from the people, and most support or signatures, which is essentially like getting a petition for anything else to Parliament. They're asking Parliament anyway. The election petition rules, it makes it sound like these are the rules, for the election. But what they actually are, I actually rang up one of the main organiser who did the, for the Boris Johnson ward, the Boris Johnson electoral area, not ward, in this by-election that's just been. I spoke to him about it. He actually says that these rules are for questioning an election under the local government. Local election petition means a petition questioning an election under the Local Government Act. So the actual petitioning brought to the Parliament is actually under the Local Government Act. I wonder if that's where the rules for petitioning Parliament are, but they won't because it's a Local Government Act, isn't it? I wonder where the actual legislation is then for petitioning Parliament, if there is any. So the Local Government Act is where the actual rules for running the petition is, which you'd have thought it would be the election petition rules, wouldn't it? Doesn't make it sound anything like it's challenging a petition, an election, does it? So in this act, it actually is bringing proceedings, right? It's bringing proceedings, and what it's actually doing is, it's actually brought by petition, though. It's actually brought, they call it a petition, when you petition for marriage or petition for divorce. It's called a petition still, and it will contain all the facts if you're challenging the election result, but not the evidence that will be relied upon. Obviously, all the ballots is the evidence, but they are accompanying the petition. They're not written in it. All the facts are written in it, in the case. So, what is amazing about this? Now that I've actually clocked what it is, because the first time I found this, I first found it because I was searching for certain words, and I only looked at a certain section of it because there was some really interesting information about the elections and so forth. But now I've actually clocked it now. I get what it is. It's a special. It's very, very, very special proceedings, a unique type of proceeding brought if you want to challenge an election. And it's to the Supreme Court. It's got to be to the Supreme Court when you got your 3 judges in the Supreme Court, although this was before Gordon Brown abolished the Appeal at Jurisdiction Act, which you didn't really need the Appeal at Jurisdiction Act anyway, according to Tumulus Petitioning Act. You didn't even need the 1688 Bill of Rights. Now this is amazing, because what this is, it's showing that in an action you do in connection with Parliament, it's not proceedings in Parliament, is it? But you're petitioning Parliament for an election, right? And if you want to challenge that election in any way, if it's legitimacy, you got to go to the Supreme Court, right? So that, if you look at the Human Rights Act, it's got in section 6.6, there's this differentiation when anything is in connection with Parliament. It's for the purposes of Parliament. Like, for example, it's not just in Parliament debates. How did it get into Parliament? Who sent it there? How did it get submitted to Parliament? It just doesn't appear in Parliament, right? So like a government consultation. A government consultation is in connection with Parliament because you're filling in the consultation. Parliament are asking for a survey. It's not for the local council. It's not for a local criminal case or a civil case or a local court. It's in connection with Parliament. When you sign, when it pops up on your computer screen and you fill it in, it's in connection with Parliament. Verbs featured it on his channel. He shared it. He said, look, let's fill this in. Everyone fill this in. When he shares it, he's sharing it in connection with Parliament. Why? Because the proceedings, the function, the entire facilitation of that consultation is a parliamentary consultation, right? And they count it all in Parliament, get the results in Parliament, right? Everyone has to sign it. I'm not in Parliament. I'm in my house. But when I fill it in, it's in connection with Parliament. It's not, I'm not ordering sausages from the butchers, and I'm not, bringing a criminal case. This is answering a document, engaging with a document in proceedings with Parliament. You have to be in the Parliament. I don't know why people don't get this. The police officer is not a judge and he's not a prosecutor, but the proceedings outside of the courtroom before the court, leading up to it, are in connection with the criminal case and so forth, right? So that means that if it has to have special proceedings to challenge its legitimacy, then surely if you are petitioning Parliament, like when you did it through the Tumulus Petitioning Act, it had to be checked by three justices or a larger part of a grand jury, right? Well, that's checked, not challenged. They abolished that in 1986. Actually, not that long after, too long after this, really. But that was never challenging it for its legitimacy, though. So you would think that because its proceedings, your petition in Parliament, so your case to Parliament, is definitely qualifies for something in connection with Parliament, because that's like what Human Rights Act 6.6 is. And you see, when you have when Parliament hold an inquiry, a public inquiry, the Inquiries Act 2005 and the Previous Tribunals Act, it's a special temporary court that's put together. It's like a customised court. It's not a civil court or a criminal court. It's a special court that is formed whenever you have an inquiry, just for the purposes of that one inquiry, and it has a chair and so forth, and it can do investigations and organise, and it has given some of the court powers, and then it can refer, if it has any civil or criminal matters that need to be addressed, it can refer them to the High Court, which the Royal Courts of Justice or whatever, right? This is special proceedings to challenge an election, and you got prosecutors and judges, but it says Supreme Court. So that means that really the jurisdiction of Parliament from 1960, it's saying that it has to be in the Supreme Court. If you're challenging the legitimacy of it, this is like what's going on in America now with Trump and all this, Biden and Hunter Biden and all that Trump business to do with, impeachments and so forth. Although Parliament is really meant to have a judicial function, the Lords was meant to be the highest court of appeal, but Gordon Brown scrapped that in 2009, 2010. But really, you still can petition Parliament, either of the houses. You didn't even need that Appeal Act Jurisdiction Act. It even says that in the Tumulus Petitioning Act, even before that act, None of these acts are actually required for petitioning Parliament. They just add certain rules and clauses. The most notable being the right to petition in 1688, where you get your immunity. So it's only created for that purpose because, 1661 and before, everyone's petitioning. They've still got the right. They're petitioning either of the houses or the king. It is created for the purpose of the immunity, that 1688 Act. That's the whole point. Prevents any other party from intervention in you bringing the proceedings or bringing the petition. This is very, very strong evidence that really it should be if someone wants to challenge the legitimacy of your petitioning case, then it really should be the Supreme Court. Maybe it shouldn't even be the Royal Courts of Justice or a local magistrates court. That's quite serious because this is an example of something that you're doing in connection with Parliament. An election is it tells you it's a petition to Parliament for an election, and when you're petitioning Parliament, you're bringing a case to Parliament for a debate, and if anything about that case you're bringing, any of your actions and so forth are brought, it's suggesting that this would be in line with the Human Rights Act, Section 6, and so forth. Really, if you think back to the Bill of Rights, illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters that are already decidable by Parliament. But the thing is, I don't think anyone's been prosecuted in this Act. I'll have to read all of it. I think it just challenges the legitimacy of the election, and if it's found to have been fraudulently done, then they have to redo it. I'm not too sure. I think they're just trying to establish if it was legitimate or not. I'm not too sure if there are actually any convictions or prosecutions, because in this Act, if not, then it would suggest that, the immunity or whatever, and it's just a matter of whether, it was void, whether you void it or not. One thing's for certain, if any of the voting ballots are dodgy or illegitimate or wrongly filled in or whatever, they are set aside. And that would be something that this would determine if they weren't correctly set aside, if they were somehow included or wrongly counted rather than being set aside. But when you set them aside, you agree that, these are sketchy. Like on my petition, I got some assistance from someone, and they went and got a lot of dodgy signatures, which I didn't know because I couldn't even check them properly because 38 Degrees won't even let us see the emails, even though it's my petition and I've got the right to the data. 38 Degrees won't letting people see all their own data on their petitions. And then 38 Degrees took a couple of mine down. But I said to him, you can't intervene in a campaign. Any dodgy signatures on elections and ballots are just set aside, discounted. Plus, it's not for 38 Degrees really to count them. The council is supposed to count them and check them. That's the whole point. The 38 Degrees are just a facilitator, and if you're, if you're honest about it, the reason why it has to have the name, address, electronic communication, and so forth, and why, so you can check that it's legitimate or not, and if it's not, then it's discounted, set aside. It doesn't write it off. You can't have, a couple of people writing the entire election off just because they, spoiled it. Because otherwise people would just crash them all the time. You get, if people don't like any of the political parties, they would go and, fill it in wrong on purpose. And, you can't just end it, delete the whole thing. That's what 38 Degrees were doing. They were deleting the whole petition. And to be honest, the petition doesn't even need to be judged on the signatures. It can be judged on just the very strong facts and evidence might be substantial enough to get the action. And at the end of the day, you're getting the evidence so that when it goes to the council chamber or the government petitions committee, they check it and they determine if the facts and evidence are right or wrong, if the signatures are legitimate or not. It's because otherwise, if 38 Degrees just merely the facilitator, if they are, they're almost like pretending that they're the council. No, we'll take this petition and so forth. Well, if you're going to, it's amazing 38 Degrees, that decide whether you can have a park or not. Now, 38 Degrees deciding actually whether you can have a new park or not, or whether or not, you can have the tax change on tampons or whatever. I think they're delegating, who's delegating authority to 38 Degrees? It would like 38 Degrees are the council. This is the thing, that they're merely providing a service to host, facilitate something. This is the thing. you know. And the fact that they weren't letting people see all their emails, because you could actually do something with those emails. You can reuse them, and it's almost like your complete data of your supporters, and they weren't wanting you to give it. I mean, because, you know, it possibly would hurt the donations to 38 Degrees site, because if you start collecting a lot of the full data of all your supporters, that means you can contact them independently yourself, which you've got a right to do. And 38 Degrees might not need, people might not need to donate as much money to 38 Degrees anymore, because they might just have almost like, when you start doing big petitions, like 100,000 signatures, and you've got all your own data that you collected, which you're entitled to, it's almost like you've got a political party in a way, with loads of members, but only for one subject. You know, it's almost like the Get a New Park party, or the, Save the Hospital party, or the, you know, Change the Tampon Tax party, or whatever, just for that purpose. Not like a 365 days a year all around party where you've got a representative in Parliament. It's just like one case. It's like I don't know why people can't get their heads around this. It is a case, you know, and you've got your participants and so forth for that one matter. But it's important when you're getting 100,000 people, because it's a big case, because they're all the people who think it's important, you know. And, you know, anyone could attach evidence. All the rights that are involved with these petitioning, and all the evidence gathering and so forth, when you get 100,000 people signing and you've put the evidence, what happens if someone else, I've got some information that you might be useful for this case that I'm signing and supporting, I might attach it. You know, the way that Parliament are running the petitions committee and the website is very, very primary school for a very, very serious matter. In fact, you've got all these banks, you know, all these banks now, Coots and NatWest and so forth, and then you've got all these big corporate entities suing the government, you know, taking governments to court because they're affecting their future profits and all this. You know, can you believe the cheek of that? Where they get all the money from? You know, it's from all the profits to enable them to bring these court cases, and they're lobbying the government with massive amounts of money put into it and so forth. We could, you know, we're wanting to get laws made and changed by getting signatures, but they dumb it down so much. You know, what would be the value? What if, you know, all these big corporate elites like Bill Gates are lobbying the government and rocking up at Michelle Donnellan's office, and then, you know, pulling a new Department of Culture and Technology and Innovation out of his back pocket, you know, as a gift in kind to the government, you know, Bill Gates, you know, he's loaded, he's got millions. You know, you can lobby the government with millions. Well, what have we got? You know, we should be able to, you know, chip in money, put it together. We can GoFundMe, but there might be something more valuable than money that you can give to a petition. If you like, you know, if you're having trouble with the rights or something, or people are getting prosecuted when they're bringing these cases, you know, because they're putting notices up around the town and getting them taken down or charged with criminal damage. And just a minute, hold on, we've got rights here, you know. All that's in the same case as the petition. You know, people should be able to attach evidence and facts to it. And what is the value of that? Well, it would be a lot of value if there's 100,000 people who start, you know, adding material to it. But they don't want us to. They treat us like primary school kids with these Parliament petitions when it's a very serious subject. I mean, even Andrew Bridgen, you know, when he reads something out in Parliament, they get up and walk out. You know, is Parliament fit for purpose anymore, or is it just a couple of political parties doing what they want to do with the country, even though people have got very strong opinions about other matters that are important to them, who might not even vote in the election because no one represents their interests? You know, this is it. I think that this act here is very, very strong evidence. I'm starting to wonder whether the government actually could have brought that injunction against Insulate Britain through the Royal Courts of Justice. If it says it has to be Supreme Court here, if it's, you know, if you're petitioning Parliament in connection with Parliament, it's looking like it's to be Supreme Court. We've got 3 justices in there. I mean, that is almost like the Tumulus Petitioning Act, isn't it? You know, I think that it's suggestive of that. And also, you know, I've got to get a better representation written to 38 Degrees about my 3 petitions being taken down, because I don't think they can, because it's illegal campaign intervention. Because 38 Degrees, it's not their position, it's not their authority to delete your data, remove it. It's protected. It's illegal campaign intervention. If they want to run a petition site and facilitate it, we've got rights. You know, it's quite a serious business running petition sites, because the case is to the government. You can't, when someone's attached loads of evidence and got signatures, even if some of them aren't legitimate, they're set aside. They're not counted. That's all. And you know, the fact that 38 Degrees were obstructing us from even being able to check them properly by not letting us see all the email addresses, when it's our data, you're the creator of your own petition. You got the rights to the data of your own petition. They're just a third party. And I don't even know if the council were getting all the signatures to check them if they went on all the download sheets. So, you know, 38 Degrees, it's sketchy. I don't know how it ended up like that. I think it's people like this Vince Dale, who are like, you know, backhanding with the Labour Party, who are putting bad influences out, or people who are ill-advising these websites like 38 Degrees.